Greetings, my glorious Adeptus Custodes. Today I will tell you the truth. And it is, alas, not the truth that is known in every corner of the Imperium, for our dark past is full of bitterness and suffering. Well, many of you are wondering how I know so much about the universe. Why do secrets hidden from even the most loyal servants of the Imperium lie within the pages of this diary? Events so far in the past and so far in the future. Well, I cannot tell the whole truth, not even to you, my loyal Custodes. I can only say that the events on Molech and my work with artifacts from the dark age of technology are to blame. In my research, I have seen the events of many worlds and eras of countless galaxies, but I never knew what it was. The Immaterium's desire to warp my mind, or just childish fantasies and nightmares, and nothing more. After creating the first space troopers, I embarked on my plan to protect and improve humanity, scattered among countless stars, to gather under the aegis of the newborn Imperium, all the bastions of my race lost in space. I began a campaign of unprecedented proportions called the Great Crusade. I began comprehensive preparations for a galactic breakthrough in the years since the unification of Terra. I founded a corps of astro-telepaths, or astropaths, to ensure the future of my nation with mental interplanetary communication. My plan was to build the Astronomicon, an incredibly powerful psionic beacon fueled by PSI energy and my willpower. This navigational device made flying through Immaterium easier and safer, and the range of warp jumps was greatly increased. But my main accomplishment was the creation of new legions of superhuman, biologically enhanced warriors. I already had a unit of Geno soldiers under my command, so the formation of such troops was the next step in the same direction. However, the new formations were many times more powerful than the regiments of genetically enhanced fighters fighting to unite Terra. In the first stage, Lord, I embarked on the Primarch Project in hopes of producing 20 superhuman babies. You can read more about it in the chapter of my diary dedicated to the history of the creation of the Primarchs. In developing the Primarch genome, I drew on my own genetic code as well as the genetic code of one of the Eternals, Erda. Growing up, these children would develop into brilliant statesmen and commanders for my armies. The Primarchs would so surpass mere mortals in the power of body and mind that no ordinary man could stand against them. But even the power of genetic engineering was not enough to make this plan a reality. So I augmented the Primarchs with the warp powers I had learned on Molech. By enhancing my creations, I endowed them with almost divine powers and charisma, but without knowing it, I made them vulnerable to the influence of the Immaterium's inhabitants. In any case, my plan almost failed due to the interference of Erda and the destructive forces of Chaos. The entities of Immaterium feared that the complete triumph of Anathema, as the demons called me, would lead to the strengthening of order in the universe and the weakening of the gods of chaos themselves. Despite the numerous PSI amulets I had placed in genetic laboratories near the Himalayas, the embryo capsules were thrown into the Immaterium. The babies were presumed dead, and I had to devise a new plan. Using biomaterials derived from the Primarch's genome, I created a caste of warriors who possessed some of the superhuman features of their progenitors from my genome. These Space Marine of the first base, also called Legiones Astartes, became the spiritual heirs of the genetically enhanced human soldiers from the Unification Wars. Having created such an army, I led 20 legions of Space Marines on their first mission to liberate the solar system, to gain experience in both combat and diplomacy. At this stage, all the brotherhoods of Astartes consisted of young men born on Terra. They expelled the alien invaders from the satellites of Jupiter and Saturn, but more importantly, secured a peace treaty and subsequent alliance between the Imperium and the Mechanicum cult. The crucial military-political alliance between Terra and Mars, sealed by an act, brought much of the technology and resources needed to launch the Great Crusade to the stars. At the same time, the emergence of the Imperium of mankind was formalized, and the imperial bureaucracy was established on the old Earth. The cult of Mechanicum later evolved into the Adeptus Mechanicus, one of the many structures of the newborn Adeptus Terra, the unwieldy government of the Imperium, also called the Priesthood of Earth. At the end of the 30th millennium, Once the Eldar Sinfall dispelled the warp storms caused by the agony of Slaynesh's birth, I finally embarked on the Great Crusade. And if you want to learn more about the Eldar Sinfall, visit my diary chapter with the history of the Eldar race. Eldars are Asuryani salvation. A fast-growing band of expeditionary fleets carried the armies of the Imperium across the galaxy, where warriors rediscovered long-lost colonies, liberated humans from the Xenos yoke, and conquered colossal territories in the name of the young Imperium. But more importantly, as the armadas advanced into the depths of uncharted space, I was able to find my lost sons. The Primarchs scattered across the galaxy were found one by one, sometimes decades apart. Reunited with their father, they were given command of legions of space marines created from their genoseed. These mighty warriors played a key role in building the Imperium. Together they brought thousands of worlds into harmony, establishing Imperium rule there and teaching the locals Imperial truth. This rational and atheistic faith in the advances of science and technology rejected any form of human folly and fanaticism, such as religion. I myself had once declared that humanity would be truly free to evolve and reach its destined position as the greatest intelligent race in the galaxy, only after the last stone of the last temple had fallen on the head of the last priest. I managed to purge all of ancient Terra of all ancient religions and superstitions. Even before the Crusade began, I was anxious to personally see to the destruction of the last house of worship in the Old Land. Moreover, I engaged the priest Uriah Alatar, who lived there, in a battle where ideas, doctrines, and wit served as weapons. When I ordered the Thunder Warriors to destroy the temple, Uriah refused to follow me and entered the temple, and flames engulfed his body. Before he died, a smile was visible on his face. One of the goals of the Crusade was the idea that it was the human race that should rightfully own the galaxy. Why humans specifically? First, humans had the cleanest appearance. Second, other intelligent species like the Eldar had already shown that they could not support civilizations occupying the entire Milky Way. Now it was time for the children of Terra to find their place among the stars. All the alien races that humanity had ever encountered had either shown unquenchable hostility or could in the future prevent humans from dominating the galaxy and utilizing its resources. Therefore, they were to be exterminated on the spot if they showed even a hint of aggression or tried to hinder humanity. I believed that such a credo should be implemented on all human planets, peacefully if possible, but enforced by force if there was resistance. I believed that without true unity, humanity could not survive and prosper in an extremely dangerous universe. If this requires going to war against those who refuse to recognize such a necessity, then sadly there is no other option. As in the days of the unification of Terra, I mourned the innocent victims and the suppression of personal freedoms that sometimes accompanied the operations of expeditionary fleets. I saw no other way. It was the only way I could both protect the human race and weaken the immense decaying power of the Dark Gods. For this purpose, back in the days of the unification wars of Terra, I created the Imperial Truth. Imperial Truth was a rational atheistic philosophy that guided the conquest of Terra and the formation of the Imperium during the Great Crusade. The core of Imperial Truth was that the universe is rational and that knowledge conquers fear and brings freedom from the horrors of the Age of Discord. This assertion was accompanied by a rejection of the irrational, the supernatural, and a belief in unknowable forces and principles. On united Terra and in the Imperium of mankind, there was no place for the mysteries of the soul, sorcery, and gods. Those who clung to their ignorance were exposed, and their lies were drowned out by the roar of the pyre. In the shadow of superstition and false faith, the horrors of the past grew. In order to survive rebirth, the future could not tolerate past delusions. What was denied was not that there were other dimensions, alien races and mutants with psychic powers, but only the supernaturalness of it. That some might call these phenomena sorcery or link them to the gods were only signs of incomplete understanding. Imperial Truth guarded the light of reason and science, and it contained one inviolable injunction: you are not allowed to develop thinking machines. I remembered my people's great war against the thinking robots. the so-called Iron Men, who had participated in the destruction of humanity's previous interstellar civilization at the end of the Dark Age of technology. I did not wish to repeat the mysticies of the past, so when the Great Crusade found advanced societies in the cosmic darkness, where artificial intelligence was used, the expeditionary fleets simply destroyed them as a potential threat to the entire newborn Imperium. As the Crusade expanded, there was growing concern that humanity's agents and warriors, although I myself was a gifted psyker, I regarded the spread of psionic mutations with more than ambivalent feelings. My opinion was that much of the human race had not yet evolved enough in a psychic or spiritual sense to fully control the power of the warp or to avoid the temptations of the more malevolent inhabitants of the Immaterium. As the Imperial army and space troopers conquered the galaxy, they increasingly encountered planets enslaved by mysterious forces and so-called witch doctors, mystics with unnatural skills. In fact, these people were members of chaos cults. Fighting the Imperium troops, they used psi powers received from demonic entities of the Immaterium. Their psionic gifts were very similar to the special abilities of the Thousand Sons Legion. At one point, the warriors of Magnus the Red were criticized by Mortarion, Primarch of the Death Guard, and Leman Russ, Lord of the Space Wolves. The former, who had fought sorcerers on his home world of Barbarous, knew from personal experience the dangers of the warp. As for the Fenrisian, he considered any battle where a fighter relied on subterfuge, cunning maneuvers, or any tricks beyond a contest of physical strength to be dishonorable. The fact that the adepts of the Thousand Sons were studying witchcraft disgusted Roos beyond belief, and he fought most fiercely to have the use of PSI abilities banned in the Imperium altogether. Lehman's position was influenced by his personal observations made during his joint campaigns with the Magnus Legion. The rift in the state had widened to the point where it threatened the stability of the young Imperium, so I was forced to call a great council to resolve the issue once and for all. The representatives of both sides arrived on the planet Nikaea determined to make their arguments to the judge, whose seat I took, sitting on a throne in an ancient amphitheater where tens of thousands of spectators had gathered. The prosecutors were witch hunters, including, for example, the Sisters of Silence. They read out a long list of atrocious crimes against the loyalists of the Imperium, committed by the witch slaves of what would later be called Chaos. They recalled delusional mutants who had lost their human form, cultists and power-hungry men who used their PSI skills for dark purposes. In addition, everyone in the gathering knew of the terrible damage done by uncontrollable or possessed psychers in the early years of the Age of Discord. The powerful advocate of the use of PSI powers, Primarch Magnus the Red, acted as a protector. His very presence intimidated many of the participants, but he spoke with an irresistible appeal that only the Emperor's son possessed. The Scarlet King argued that there is no such thing as inherently bad knowledge, and any quest for new information is useful if the seeker of truth becomes the master, not the servant, of what he has learned. Magnus stated unequivocally that the Astartes of the Thousand Sons had fully studied the science of black arts, and there was no unknowable or too confusing information left for them. But at the same time, the legionaries served humanity and were not going to enslave it. As a result, my son asked me not to ban the use of PSI gifts, but to help further research them so that such abilities could be utilized as much as possible for the benefit of the Imperium and the human race. The Scarlet King spoke so passionately and inspirationally that opinion at the Nicaean gathering was even more radically divided. Although the Psyker's opponents took a more reasoned stance, these witch hunters were inferior to Magnus in their powers of persuasion. When a group of Space Marine Bibliarians approached the throne room, the tension in the amphitheater reached a climax. I nodded graciously to the warriors, and all present fell silent. The delegation of legionnaires included some of the most powerful psionics of the Astartes. They surrounded the dais in a semi-ring, signaling their support for each other, and a young epistolary spoke on behalf of all the Psykers. The young man argued that psionics are like athletes in every way. Both are gifted individuals whose talents must be carefully nurtured. Human PSI abilities are not dangerous in and of themselves. Like any weapon, they can be used with both good and evil intentions. But for the sake of knowing how to harness the power of the warp, Witch doctors have made many deals with the unholy inhabitants of the Immaterium. Not sure who would win in the end. The Bibliarians therefore propose that the Imperium should thoroughly train all psychers for the sole purpose of putting their skills at the service of the human race. The state should do so immediately and in a special manner. Psi sorcery was to be banned forever, as an unpardonable crime against humanity and the worst form of heresy. Then, the debate at the Council of Nicaea would have resulted in a compromise that would have benefited both supporters and opponents of the use of psionics, but that conclave also tried Magnus the Red. The Primarch was accused of witchcraft and of introducing sorcerous practices into the legions of the Space Marines by creating the Institute of Bibliariums. When it became clear that the Scarlet King had not stopped practicing sorcery, I passed judgment on the Lord of 1,000 Suns. For years, I believed my son had obeyed his father's will. Magnus had to give up the occult sciences because of the dangers of the warp, so I could barely contain my rage. More than that, I had entrusted Magnus with the great secrets of the Immaterium, known only to me. But now it was revealed that my son, the 15th Primarch, had violated the edicts I had given him. In addition, he had at least a superficial interest in the forbidden art of psionic witchcraft. Why did that boy behave so recklessly?